Hi, in this video, I'd like to take you from this view of working with data, oh my gosh, to this view. Like, oh, this is all easy and doesn't have to be horrible. That's the idea. So we'll start with this sales data. I've got a lot of sales data here. Got about 3,100 rows of sales data. And I'm curious about the difference between price and gross. That is, I'm curious, does price have an effect on gross profit? I've been saying, well, if you raise the price, you should raise your gross profit. Well, let's see. So let's insert a pivot table. And in this pivot table, let's look at the gross, and let's put some slicers in for the sales organization and the material. So there's sales organization and material. And I'm interested in basically what prices produced what gross profits over time. So these are all the days, and these are the gross profits for all these products, for all these sales organizations. Well, let's pick one product and one organization. And so there we see the different prices and profits for 500 milliliter clear pure for team A. And then let's insert a chart that will compare these prices. So this is one that I kind of like. So the idea here is, let's go through all these different companies and see if we can pick one to see, gosh, I wonder if that made a difference. I wonder if increasing the price or decreasing the price made a difference. So this one, obviously, it made a difference. And this one, well, possibly this yellow is the higher price and this blue is the lower price. I'm going to pick Team D just because it's a little bit different. And I want to see if these prices here, or these gross profits associated with these prices, which are really similar, they're off by 9 cents, 1999 versus 1990, is this different than this? And by this, I mean, is the mean, the average gross different at these two prices? So it's kind of messy, kind of bouncing around, but it looks like this one's a little bit higher than this, but it's not real obvious. So let's look at that. And I want to use confidence intervals. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say, this is the price that I'm interested in, and I'll say it's either 1990 or it's 1875. And this was the higher price, and this was the lower price. And then I want to get the average gross, and then I want to get the standard deviation, and I want to get the count, and then I want to calculate the standard error, and then I want to look at the multiplier, or have a multiplier, and then I'll also look at the confidence interval associated with that multiplier and that standard error. And then I'm going to look at the lower limit of the confidence interval and the upper limit. And I want to see how these differ. And specifically, I want to see if the lower limit of the higher price is close to the upper limit of the lower price. So do they overlap? So let's do some computation. Here is the all the prices that were either 1899 or 1990. And I'm going to use this again and again. So I'm going to copy that range. And then I'm going to create a standard deviation of the sample here, and then I'll just paste that range. It's the same range. And then the count, I'll just count up how many we had. We had 15. And the standard error is equal to the standard deviation divided by the square root of the sample size. So that's the standard error. And then for the multiplier, I was going to use 2. And to show you how this multiplier works, if I take the norm S, there's the Z value, and I want the cumulative. And so that corresponds to 97%. So it's everything to the left. If I do 0, it's going to be a half. So multiplier of a 0, that's exactly in the middle. That's 50% underneath the normal curve. So we're doing 2. Then the lower limit is going to be the mean minus the multiplier times the standard error. So I'm subtracting it. And the upper limit is going to be the mean plus the multiplier times the standard error. And I've got quite a bit of resolution in here. I'm going to kind of make that so it doesn't look like we're so precise. And this is actually a percent, so I'll make that a percent. Now, I'm going to drag this down, and the numbers are not right because this mean is actually going to be these values. I think it's these. Well, I'm going to select these. It's those grosses associated with that price. And I want to use those in a few more places, so I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to put it here, paste it in there, and here, so I'll paste it in there. And now I've computed these two confidence intervals. So there's I want to make that a 2. So there's the lower limit of this higher one, and there's the upper limit of this lower priced confidence interval, and they overlap just a little bit. So I'll say this is the overlap, and it's equal to this minus this. Well, that's actually a pretty tiny percent. Now this confidence interval is not the true confidence interval because I don't have both the upper and the lower. In other words, 2 should be 95%. So if I subtracted, I'll just show you. If I subtracted this norm S dist, but it was -2 and cumulative, and I'd get that 95%. So that's both sides of the normal curve. But I'm interested in just the one because I'm particularly interested in this part right here. In other words, I don't care so much about this part here and this part out here, which the confidence interval provides. I'm really interested in what's the probability of this kind of overlap. And so that's why I use just this one. And that is basically the idea. So what's the conclusion that we could draw? Well, we're pretty confident that the higher priced produced a higher gross profit for 500 milliliter clear pure. and that was the mean, and it had this standard deviation and standard error associated with the sample. But they overlap just a tiny bit. And it's really, there's a 2% chance that you'll go beyond this lower limit, and there's a 2% chance that you'll go above this upper limit. So it's really very, very small. It's like 2% of 2% that'll happen. Now, you can use goal seek, and I talked about that also. You could say what if analysis and goal seek, and I could say I want to set this cell to, I'll say the lower limit, I'll say I want to be real clear that they're separate. I want to set it to 290 by changing my sample size. See if it lets me do that. Since that's a formula, it won't let me do that, but I can change my multiplier. So it goes to 1.67 versus 2. But that's still at 1.67 or 1.7, that's still a very high confidence interval. So that's something you can do. Now, what if this count, which I calculate, what if I had one more sample, one more day? How would that affect the standard error and these limits here? Well, if this count increases, then the standard error decreases. It gets smaller. So if I change that to 16, that changed that made these limits smaller. You're more and more confident about the mean because you have a higher count. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to go over, and hopefully this video will help you.